Today I'm going to test the #1 and #2 drugstore primers in the US to see how they stack up against each other. I work in mass cosmetics, I work for CoverGirl. Mass cosmetics would be defined as cosmetics sold in Walmart, Target, drugstores, grocery stores, obviously at Ulta as well, but in terms of the category, kind of what you think of as drugstore brands. And e.l.f. really does dominate in terms of primers. Since I work for CoverGirl Face, we look a lot at what the top selling products are, and e.l.f. has some of the best primers by far based on what people are buying. I love the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer and the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. I have used both of these a lot and I really enjoy them, but I was actually curious to see kind of how they compare. I find that when I use a primer, sometimes I might notice, oh, my makeup is staying a little bit longer or my skin looks a bit smoother. If you're using them one day after another, it's really hard to know how they stack up against each other. So I thought it would be fun to try the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer on one side and then the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer on the other side, just to see how my makeup looks, how the application is different, and then to see how they last differently. Before we get into it, just a quick intro. I'm Amy. I've been working in the beauty industry for the last 10 years, and I'm here to share tips and tricks that I've learned from working with product formulators, and then also through my own trial and error in my 20s and early 30s. I am here to show you that makeup and skincare does not have to be complicated. So if that sounds interesting to you, then please subscribe and keep watching. On this side of my face, I'm going to go in with the current #1 primer in the market in mass cosmetics, and this is the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer. This is a gripping primer, which is a gel type of formula. And it is really unique because when it dries down on your face, it actually gets sticky. So it's kind of like this sticky gel. I'm gonna put it on just this half of my face. And it actually is quite a hydrating formula. If you look at the ingredients, the next two ingredients after water are butylene glycol and glycerin, which are great humectants, which means that they bind to water and draw it into the skin. And the next ingredient after that is niacinamide. So that is a great ingredient for controlling oil production, for targeting redness, for also strengthening skin barrier. The idea here is that it's really a sticky formula that's going to grip your makeup, so it's really focused on long wear. Also smoothing out the skin and just creating a nice smooth base for your makeup to be applied to. With a grip primer like this, what you want to do is apply it to your skin and then wait a minute or two until it becomes sticky. That's when it's really going to have the ability to stick to the makeup that you're applying to help extend the wear. Comparing side to side, this is the side with just my SPF on and this is the side with the primer. Definitely looks a little bit more shiny, a little bit more hydrated. The skin looks a little more plumped up, probably due to those humectants. But I'm not seeing any kind of minimizing of the pores or anything like that. You can see now a little bit of what I'm talking about with that stickiness that you get. Now on this side, I'm going to go in with the e.l.f. Putty Primer. This is a small size, but I also have the vitamin C version of the e.l.f. Putty Primer in the larger size. And this is the #2 primer for mass cosmetics. e.l.f. Putty Primer was actually the #1 for a long time until this Power Grip came along, I think maybe a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago, and by now this has crept up to be #1, but e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer is still really up there. These two are by far the #1 and 2 primers, so really America's favorites in terms of the more affordable mass cosmetics. Just because this is such a small sample size, I'm going to show you the texture with this vitamin C version, which is very similar. It's just the Poreless Putty Primer, but it has vitamin C. You can see this is in a pot and it has more of a balmy texture, sort of buttery. Because it has a lot of silicones, silicones really give that buttery, velvety feel. And the idea with this type of primer is that it's going to blur your pores and smooth the skin so that you have a really even surface for makeup to be applied to. I'm actually going to use my mini just so that I'm using the original, which is the #2. So this is the original Poreless Putty, and I'm going to apply this all over this side of my face. This also has glycerin very high up on the ingredient list, which is a humectant, so I do feel like it has filled in some of my fine lines and wrinkles around my eyes just from plumping it up and hydrating the skin. I wouldn't say that my skin is poreless, but I do feel that I'm seeing a little bit more of blurring of the pores here, where they're a bit larger on this side versus on the Power Grip side. Now I'm going to apply the rest of my makeup the same on both sides to see how the makeup applies differently with the two different primers. Or maybe it'll look exactly the same. So far, the skin on this side with the Poreless Putty primer feels a little bit more greasy, like a little bit more like there's something on my skin, just probably from those silicones. And this side feels a little bit more like I'm wearing nothing. This one feels a little bit heavier. So just finished my face base and the products went on quite similarly. I did feel like it was slightly easier to blend on this grip side, which is not what I expected. I thought that the stickiness might make it harder to blend, but when I put on my blush, it went on kind of harsh on this side, and I don't know if I just had a tiny bit more on the brush for this side, so that could have been me, but I felt like this side was a little easier to blend versus this side, but overall, very similar. I do feel like you can see my pores a tiny bit more on the grip side. If you're really looking into the pores, they look a little bit larger on this side, but I don't feel like the Poreless primer side is completely poreless. It smoothed out my skin, but I wouldn't say it made the pores completely disappear. And then looking on my chin where I do have some leftover dryness from healing breakouts, this side was more red and it did stick to the concealer quite well. There's a little bit of chunking on this side where it looks like the product's breaking up a tiny bit. This is the grip side. This is Poreless side. Here is the grip side. Here's the Poreless side. This is with my full face of makeup on. Applying the products was a similar experience. I tried to apply the same amount of product to both sides as much as possible. I feel like the contour and the blush are showing up a bit more on this side. So in that case, this primer really allows you to use less product. I feel like you still get the makeup effect here, but if I'm comparing side to side, I feel like this side looks more intense, and I tried to use the exact same amount of product. The smoothing of pores that I was seeing at the beginning, I don't think that it really lasted that much. I'm not getting like a poreless effect on this side. I still think you can see my pores. There's definitely nothing wrong with the Putty primer. I like it, but if I'm comparing both, this one is the winner for me just because it felt so lightweight. When I applied my makeup, I feel like it made it feel even more lightweight putting it on, just because it felt like the primer really soaked into my skin and then the makeup was gripped and pulled into my skin. So rather than sitting on top of it, it felt more like it was really gripped and adhered to the skin. Because of that, it also felt a bit more like I wasn't wearing anything. In terms of finish, I'm getting a similar effect. I would say there's not a lot of shine showing through. I overall am happy with both products. This is really nice to apply because it feels so buttery, but I definitely choose this Power Grip Primer as my fave because it grips the makeup and it just feels better to me. If you zoom in, I would say the skin looks smooth on both sides, but it doesn't look noticeably smoother on this poreless side. It's the end of the day, and I would say that I think I've noticed that the grip primer has held the makeup on a little bit better. I've noticed the makeup fading a little bit more in this area on the side where I'm wearing the poreless primer. I think in general, the product has kind of broken up a bit around my chin where I get extra dry and kind of flaky. I'll zoom you in. So here you can see it's breaking up quite a bit over here. And then in the nose area, I think that my skin is showing through a bit more here, and then looking a little bit dry on my under eye area on both sides. I would say they faded pretty evenly. It's not a drastic difference, so it's really probably more a preference of which texture you like on your skin and your skin type. But for me, I definitely prefer the grip primer. I didn't get that much of a pore blurring effect from the Poreless Putty primer, but I do enjoy that texture. But for me, the gripper is definitely the winner. I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more content like this, then please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And let me know in the comments if there's any makeup products you want me to talk about or try out for you next time.